Miami when they were the better team. So this is one that we kind of saw coming, and it was weird. It feels wrong to get so firmly behind a team playing Bill Belichick, but we all saw it coming, and it happened. And the key moment, and I think this is what Tyreek Hill was referring to,
it is
late in the first half, 24 seconds left. They're on the 42-yard line of the New England Patriots facing 4th and 7. I talked to Mike McDaniel about this after the game. We also did talk about his RS7. He said his battery was dead in the key fob. Anyway, instead of going with a field goal, he said he talked to his special teams coordinator. It would have been too far for the field goal, and then you give the Patriots a chance to get a first down and kick a field goal of their own. So it's a 6-point swing if you miss. So they were either going to try to draw them offside and get 5 yards closer for a 55-yard field goal, or just go for it. So he processed all the information, decided to go for it. He said he had a couple of gotta-have-it plays that he thought would work, didn't anticipate it would pop for a touchdown, and off it went. They were just looking to get themselves in position for a makeable field goal. But 17-0. I mean, we've seen that before. What's the difference between 13-0 and 17-0? It was that Jaguars-Bengals Thursday night game last year, the one before all hell broke loose with Urban Meyer. 17 versus 13, 21 versus 17, that kind of thing makes a difference. To go up 17 instead of 13, it just felt over at that point because it felt like the Patriots weren't going to score 17 points if they played 8 quarters or 12 quarters, much less 4.
Yeah, it really did. And in watching that game in real time and covering it for the site, that's exactly how it felt. And honestly, if not for Brian Daboll, to me, Mike McDaniel going for it on 4th and 7 in that situation was the call of the day. All right, like that was a huge play. It was a huge call. And when you look at the way that team is constructed, that's what they can do on any given play. When you've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, any play can pop and go for a touchdown because those guys have game-changing speed. So it was a really good ball by Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he didn't throw the most good balls I've ever seen, but like that one was exactly where it needed to be. It was a seed. It was in stride, and that allowed Jalen Waddle to do his thing and get down the field and get into the end zone. And that's a huge play. And really, it helped them kind of like make the Patriots kick the bucket a little bit sooner.
And somebody pointed out that Bill Belichick, there's a different vibe. There's almost excuse making. It was just a couple plays here or there that made a difference. That's not the Belichick that we know. Typically because the Belichick we know doesn't have to make excuses. Right. We've heard him say on multiple occasions, it's ultimately on me. If it doesn't work, blame me. I've said this before, and Jason Garrett and I had a discussion about this last night during a digital taping that we did. He has a big pile of chips that he's amassed over the last 20 years, and this is a year where he's got to use some of them.
Yes.
Because he's not going to be on the hot seat. He can get away with this. He can get away with making Matt Patricia his play caller and making Joe Judge his quarterback's coach when Patricia was defensive coordinator for years and failed as head coach of the Lions. And Joe Judge was a special teams coordinator and failed as head coach of the Giants. These are the guys running your offense, and it just isn't working. And they're going to have to get better on the fly, and they may have to get better without Mac Jones. He's got a back injury. X-rays were negative on Jones. I'm told that there's optimism, it's nothing serious, and that the assumption is if and when we see a practice report, well, we will see a practice report, his name will likely be on it. Is limited on Wednesday with a back injury. We'll see how it goes. They go to Pittsburgh. That's always a tough place for them in the regular season, not a tough place in the postseason, but they have a hard time there in the regular season, and they'll have a very hard time if it's Brian Hoyer and not Mac Jones.
Yeah. And, if they're going to have a hard time protecting whoever the quarterback is, and they certainly could against that Steelers defense, then that's going to be a real problem. I mean, they didn't run the ball well yesterday. They never really seemed to find any sort of rhythm, any sort of consistency. The script was all right, when they went down the field for their first drive, but we just showed it. I mean, that ended up in a tip pass and an interception. So, it's like, it's great, but then you don't finish and you have a turnover. Well, then it's really not that great. So I don't really know what the Patriots are going to do. I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know what they're going to look like. I mean, they always take the first quarter of the season to kind of figure themselves out anyway. But man, they don't have an easy schedule. So they could be 0-4, especially if they don't have Mac Jones. And that's kind of like, oh my gosh, what are we really looking at if the Patriots are 0-4? I don't even, have they ever even started 0-4 in the Belichick era? I could have looked this up, I guess, before I said it on the air, but like, I that's crazy to me that they really could legitimately be 0-4.
They were not good in 2000. In 2001, they had to kind of fight and scratch and claw their way through the season. They were 5-5, I think, after losing to the Rams on a Sunday night, who they would inevitably beat in the Super Bowl that year. But this is just not your usual Belichick team.
Oh, yeah.
And look, I'm sorry. I'm not. How do I put this? I really don't get into the whole hero worship. And I'm not going to give Bill Belichick a lifetime pass just because he's won 6 Super Bowls. Because we know how the NFL is. It's not what have you done for me lately. It's what are you doing for me right now, and what can I expect you to do for me tomorrow? And when you have the owner of the team, Robert Kraft, openly say back in March that he's disappointed, frustrated, whichever term he used, he's not happy that they'd gone 3 years without winning a playoff game. He's not going to put up with this. There will be changes. And, Miles, I think all of this flows at some level from the fact that Bill's got a couple of his kids on the staff, and he can't fire them. So he can't fire anybody else. He's got to take the bullets. He's got to be the one who's responsible for everything, because you get problems among your coaching staff if you start throwing out guys who maybe aren't part of the problem because you can't move on from the guys who maybe are part of the problem because they're your kids. That's the risk of this semi-widespread nepotism in the NFL. Because if you have a son or a daughter who's working for you and not getting it done, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? And we saw that come to full fruition when they got blown off the field 47-17 by the Bills in the playoffs last year. I think that is, at some level, part of the problem here for Bill Belichick. And again, the owners decide when they're going to make a change. I don't know how many bad years 6 championships will buy Bill Belichick, and maybe we'll find out, like how many licks it takes to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop. One last thing about Belichick before we take a break, and we do have to take a break. I asked Mike McDaniel about their post-game. Did you see their post-game interaction? There wasn't much there.
No.
I asked McDaniel about it. He said, I pride myself on reading the room. I could tell Bill wasn't in the mood to talk. That was that. All right, go ahead.
That's good. All right. Well, I will just say this. You know, when you talk about kind of like excuse making, which we don't hear from Bill Belichick, kind of reminds me of going through the 2016 season with Jeff Fisher and the Los Angeles Rams. I don't want to like you obviously can't compare, right? Like you can't. Right. But the situation, when you start hearing coaches start talking about different things like that, like that is sort of where things start to end up. And again, Bill Belichick's got 6 rings, right? As the head coach of the New England Patriots. It buys him a lot. Like you said, the chips, you got a lot of them. You built up a lot. But like that, the whole start, when you start saying, well, you know, it's on me, you know, if it's 1 or 2 things that it's this and it's that, like, you don't want to hear that from your head coach. That's so 16 Rams and Fisher. That's kind of what that reminds me of. 2020
and 2021 Vikings with Zimmer. Same thing. Excuse for everything. Got an excuse for everything. Well, hey, everybody's got an excuse. The best is you still got to win the games.
We don't make excuses, but here's this excuse and this excuse. I'm like, come on.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.